Back in the past, roughly 8 years ago, Craigslist was a commonplace service that I frequently utilized whenever I needed to sell something or find a budget-friendly item to buy. Living in a pleasant town, I was generally comfortable meeting new people for quick exchanges. During that period, I was in search of either a treadmill or an elliptical. Purchasing them new was quite expensive, but Craigslist often featured used ones in good condition, sometimes priced at just a couple of $100. After scrolling through various posts, I found one that caught my eye. I reached out to the seller, Mike, and received a reply the next day. Mike assured me that the treadmill was in like-new condition, and we arranged to meet later that day. The address provided led me to a farmhouse on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a vast plot of land, though it seemed unused for farming. Upon arrival, I parked in the front yard, joining several other vehicles. Mike, smoking on the porch, greeted me and guided me to the back of the house, where the treadmill was set up in the garage. It was plugged in and ready for testing. Mike leaned against the wall, encouraging me to try it out. As I tested the treadmill, it abruptly shut off when I increased the speed. Simultaneously, the garage door crashed down behind me, creating a startling noise. My heart raced from the unexpected scare. Mike, nonchalant, claimed it was an old garage issue. Feeling uneasy, I declined the purchase, and Mike gestured to show me the way out. As I followed him through the house, I noticed its old and messy interior, resembling a farmhouse from the 1900s. Piles of items cluttered the space, blocking hallways. Reaching the front door, Mike paused, facing it without opening it. Suddenly, he turned to me and uttered an emotionless apology. A chill ran down my spine as I sensed something was amiss. Swiftly, he moved towards me, grabbing my arm and forcing me deeper into the house. Panicking, I yelled and struggled to break free. He pushed me down the cluttered hallway, nearly back to the garage, until I tripped over scattered items. Taking advantage of his loss of balance, I rushed to the front door, unlocked it, and sprinted to my truck. As I drove away, the man emerged from the house, sprinting toward my truck. Fortunately, I escaped, but my hands trembled on the steering wheel all the way home. Despite notifying the police, the situation didn't unfold as expected. Upon arrival at the farmhouse, no one answered the door. The man never showed up, and the vehicles on the lot were found to be unregistered with missing license plates. One of them was identified as a recently stolen car. Strangely, the man I encountered wasn't the owner. The true owner resided in a neighboring city, using the farmhouse for temporary storage. This terrifying incident occurred many years ago, and the man remains at large. I don't know his intentions back then, or what he might be attempting with others now. Though it's a lost cause, the unsettling feeling of his presence still lingers. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel to stay tuned. I frequently use online platforms like Craigslist for the same reasons as everyone else. These sites offer the opportunity to find expensive items at heavily discounted prices, or even inexpensive things for an even more affordable cost. Since I don't have a substantial amount of money, using these platforms is sometimes crucial, especially when it comes to acquiring items like furniture, which tends to be quite expensive elsewhere. This particular incident occurred when I was on the lookout for a dining room table. The one we had was really old and had served as a central spot for my family to eat and work over the years. I explored options on Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp, but neither had any appealing listings. Most of the tables were still relatively expensive, and attempts to negotiate with sellers proved unsuccessful. Frustrated, I turned to Craigslist, which, despite being less popular in my area, consistently presented the most affordable deals, albeit somewhat rare to find. As soon as I opened the Craigslist site and entered my search, a promising listing appeared. It was a simple wooden dining table with minimal signs of wear, and the seller had posted it for only $100. This was a significant deal compared to the $400 to $500 range others were asking for similar items. I promptly messaged the seller, expressing my interest in checking it out and confirming my willingness to pay the full price. The seller didn't reply immediately, so I took a break and spent time with my kids until around 7 p.m. when they went to their rooms to get ready for bed. Returning to my laptop, I found a response just a few minutes old. The seller apologized, and mentioned that the table would be discarded the next morning. However, if I truly wanted it, I had to pick it up that night or any time before 5 a.m. the following day. It struck me as odd that he was willing to sell it at any time during the night, and his reasoning didn't quite make sense. Nevertheless, after some consideration, I replied, stating that I could pick it up right away. It was only 10 minutes from my place, so I informed my wife about the situation and headed out. Given the context, you might already know that I don't live in an affluent area. When I say the seller's house was really worn down, I mean it was in a severe state of disrepair. It was a small house like others in our area, but the yard was cluttered with trash and random items, enclosed by a thin chain-link fence. I parked on the side, opened the fence, walked through the yard, and approached the door, which was already open. I could hear people talking and laughing inside. I lightly knocked on the door, and a man appeared, inviting me in. He looked like he was in his mid-20s, possibly a college student. However, as I stepped inside, I couldn't ignore the overall unpleasantness of the place. Beer cans were scattered around, and the carpet had visible stains. It seemed like a poorly maintained house that had hosted numerous college parties. Nevertheless, the man led me down the hallway and into the kitchen, discussing how he didn't have room for the table anymore. In the kitchen, 2 other men of similar age were engaged in conversation. Next to them was the table, surprisingly appearing almost untouched. I checked its stability, but as I did, the entire house fell silent. The 2 men stopped talking, and the seller didn't speak either. When I looked up, I saw them all staring at me. Feeling uneasy, I asked if I had done something, and their intense gazes made me feel like I was intruding. Observing one of the men closest to me, I noticed his dilated pupils, a sign of drug use. What substance he was on, I didn't know, but I sensed that this situation wasn't right. Beyond the strangeness, I had no intention of purchasing a table from such a house and individuals. Softly, I informed them, I think I'm going to pass on it. Thank you, though. I started walking towards the hallway, but one of them stepped in front of me. He didn't utter a word. He just stood there, blocking my exit. The way they were looking and acting signaled that this was a planned scenario, and they likely never intended to sell the table. Fear crept over me as the anticipation of standing there surrounded by these strangers overwhelmed me. However, one of them whispered something to the others and they moved aside without saying a word. Cautiously, I walked between them, hurried down the hallway, and left the house. Many thoughts raced through my mind during the drive home. I knew they had planned something terrible, but the specifics eluded me. I was grateful they let me go, but the fear lingered. Upon reaching home, I informed my wife, who urged me to call the police and report the incident. Unfortunately, without any actual harm done, the police couldn't take any action. Whatever those men had in mind remains unknown, and I can only hope that no one else has to experience such a situation. It was around this time last year when I opted to utilize Craigslist to sell a few items I needed to part with. My house was becoming cluttered, and with plans to acquire new furniture and winter approaching, I wanted to quickly declutter. The primary items I was selling were 2 lounge chairs in my living room, seizable and slightly outdated, but fully functional with no stains or tears. Within half a day, I received a few responses, but 2 of them made lowball offers. There was only one serious buyer, a guy who wanted to check out the chairs after work around 6 or 6:30. Normally, I'd choose to meet in a public place, but transportation and lifting the chairs on my own posed challenges. So I shared my address, turned on the front porch light, opened the curtains and sat in the living room on my phone, awaiting his arrival. After about 20 minutes, a truck pulled into my driveway. It took a few more minutes before the guy, named Matt, got out and approached the door. He seemed average, late 20s or early 30s, dressed in typical work attire. Matt engaged in small talk about his excitement for the chairs, and everything appeared to be going smoothly. As Matt sat in the chair discussing the price, we heard a car door slam, seemingly in his driveway. He quickly went outside to check, and I watched through the window, seeing no other cars. Matt returned, visibly upset, claiming someone had stolen items from his car. His distrustful gaze suggested he suspected me, although I assured him otherwise. While skepticism lingered, we heard footsteps approaching the front door. Suddenly, a hooded guy pushed the door open, stepping inside with bloodshot eyes and a deranged appearance. His right hand was concealed in his pocket, outlining a potentially dangerous object. Standing a few feet away, he seemed consumed by rage. Despite his young age, around 18 or 19, he exuded a palpable threat. Both Matt and I froze, attempting not to escalate the situation. However, Matt started coaxing the kid to calm down, raising his hands and taking a step closer. The kid swiftly withdrew the weapon from his pocket, pointing it at Matt. Whether it was real or fake remained unclear, but the kid yelled at Matt to leave, and in shock, he complied. The kid followed Matt out of the house, holding him at gunpoint all the way to the truck, where Matt got in the driver's seat and the kid in the back. I watched in terror as they drove away against Matt's will. I dialed 911 immediately, describing the incident to the operator while attempting to follow them in my car. However, they vanished, leaving no trace. The police initiated an investigation using the information I provided to identify Matt and his truck. In the ensuing days, I waited for a call, but it never came. Both Matt and his truck remain missing, and I can't shake the feeling of guilt, questioning if I could have done more. The situation was perilous, and I might have risked my life. Even in those final moments, uncertainty lingered about whether Matt was part of an elaborate plan. I still don't understand what the kid wanted or why any of it happened. Almost a year has passed, and the likelihood of uncovering more details seems slim. This incident took place more than a decade ago when I was attending college. During that time, I resided with my parents, and my daily routine included a 1-hour bus ride to and from school. On several occasions each week, I would socialize with friends or go for drinks after classes. I had a locker on campus where I often stored my school-related items, preventing me from carrying them around unnecessarily. The building with my locker remained accessible until late in the evening, making it convenient for my after-class activities. One Thursday after class, I secured my school bag, containing my Acer laptop that was nearly 4 years old, in my locker. It was a functional device that I used on a daily basis. Later that evening, after spending time at my friend's place near the school, I returned to my locker only to discover that the lock had been tampered with. Upon opening the locker, my bag was nowhere to be found. Distressed and anticipating the potential impact on my academics due to the loss of the laptop, I promptly reported the incident to the on-site security. We reviewed the security footage, revealing an unidentified person discreetly breaking into my locker. The culprit was obscured by a large hoodie and had his face covered, making identification challenging. The laptop contained crucial schoolwork, and the thought of potential academic setbacks left me distressed. The following day, I borrowed my mom's laptop, which she rarely used. I managed to access my school accounts and sent emails to several professors, explaining the situation and hoping for understanding, given the impending deadlines for some assignments. The next night, as I was browsing the web on my mom's computer in my room, I impulsively decided to search Craigslist for laptops similar to mine. To my surprise, I found a listing matching my laptop precisely, even down to the distinctive scratch on the corner from a previous accident. The seller was asking only $100, and I was certain it was mine. I posed as an interested buyer and arranged to meet the seller at a coffee shop near the school. My plan was straightforward: confront the seller and demand the return of my laptop. I hoped that the confrontation would be enough to convince him to give it back voluntarily. If the retrieval went smoothly, I intended not to press charges. On the day of the meetup, I was nervous but determined. I brought my friend Dan along for backup, unsure of the potential danger posed by the thief. Despite the apprehension, I was excited about the prospect of reclaiming my laptop, even though the possibilities of the encounter going wrong lingered in my thoughts. Dan and I arrived early at the coffee shop, waiting anxiously. A guy around my age walked in, nervously looking around before approaching me. He asked if I was there for the laptop, and I confirmed. He handed me the laptop from his backpack, and upon inspection, I immediately recognized it as mine. Placing it on the table, I turned it on, only to discover that he had reset it, erasing all my work. Disheartened by this, I picked it up and slid a few feet away, confronting the guy about its origin. I asserted that the laptop was stolen from my school locker and I was reclaiming it. The guy initially expressed surprise, but his demeanor quickly turned to anger. He denied the theft, claiming to have bought it from a friend. Undeterred, I pointed out specific scratches and stickers that confirmed its ownership. When he attempted to grab it back, I resisted and declared my intention to retain it, promising not to involve the police if he walked away. His anger escalated and he attempted to attack me, causing a commotion in the coffee shop. Witnesses started paying attention to our heated exchange, prompting an employee to intervene and suggest that he leave. The guy glared at me before storming off with his backpack. I left the coffee shop with my laptop in hand, amazed that I had successfully found and reclaimed it. As for the individual who posted it on Craigslist, I couldn't ascertain if he was the thief or merely someone who bought it from a friend. It seemed peculiar to purchase a laptop and then promptly list it on Craigslist. Awkwardly, he turned out to be a fellow student at my school, occasionally crossing paths with me. Despite reporting him for stealing my laptop, security didn't take action due to a lack of evidence or possibly negligence. Nevertheless, I was relieved to have my laptop back.